Hello. How are we doing tonight? So I think I may have figured out a system to help me with the uh, cover image changes. Hey, Katie, how are you? Do, do, do. Well, I actually have an actual physical device that I'm going to use that will actually change the scenes for me. It'll change both of them at the same time, and it's actually sits in front of me, and hopefully it'll actually work. It'll be pretty cool if it does, though, because it'll change it both for YouTube and for TikTok. Oh, that's not what I wanted. There we go. So how are we all doing tonight? Good, I hope. It honestly doesn't bother me, um, because I forget because I get too involved in actually getting to the story because I get so excited. But I'm so glad. Hey, Milky Mare, how are you? Howie Break, thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming in. Aura, thank you for being here. Forgot to clean up my desk before live, so I got soda cans to get rid of. Ah, and how old are the little people? I don't know if you've told me. Yeah, no energy drinks for me tonight, but I do have my it's a Canada Dry Fruit Splash Ginger Ale. It's basically cherry ginger ale. It's my favorite. Oh, you got a house full of littles. That's amazing. I only had two and I had my hands full. Varg, no, this is not Goosebumps. Though I do plan on reading some Goosebumps when we get closer to Halloween this year. Nope, that's just my cover image. I've got two stories tonight. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did that a couple weeks ago. But you got to come for Sunday because Sunday's going to be special. That's awesome. Yeah. That's a great age, though. 2 a.m. No, this is my current favorite soda. My all-time favorite soda was Mountain Dew Spark. It was a raspberry lemonade Mountain Dew, and it was so freaking good. And they made a zero sugar variety, so my diabetic ass could have some. Yeah, Sunday I'll be starting Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And oh, Code Red. I wish they did a zero sugar Code Red. I love that soda. Um, if I have time tonight, I'll be doing a little bit of reading from said upcoming book. So we're going to give it a couple more minutes here. Let everybody filter in. Thank you guys for the shares and the likes. That definitely helps spread the word of the live, as it were. And I really appreciate it. Makes me all the more want to drive through the Midwest now. They've got an orange one too, and man, that orange live wire or whatever it is, it's really good. All right, so I think we're safe to get started here. Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Storytime with UndeadPapa. And this is Friday Night Frontiers. Now, tonight we've got two stories that ask a simple question. What is reality? And first we'll begin with The 9 Billion Names of God by Arthur C. Clarke. Then after that, we'll be reading The Electric Ant by Philip K. Dick. So wherever you are listening from, dim the lights, sit back and relax, because story time is about to begin. This is a slightly unusual request, said Dr. Wagner, with what he hoped was commendable restraint. As far as I know, it's the first time anyone's been asked to supply a Tibetan monastery with an automatic sequence computer. I don't wish to be inquisitive, but I should hardly have thought that your establishment had much use for such a machine. Could you explain just what you intend to do with it? Gladly, replied the Lama, readjusting his silk robes and carefully putting away the slide rule he had been using for currency conversions. Your Mark V computer can carry out any routine mathematical operation involving up to 10 digits. However, for our work we are interested in letters, not numbers. As we wish you to modify the output circuits, the machine will be printing words, not columns of figures. Oh, yeah? Oh yeah, it changed. It changed. Just, it changed it. With one button, by the way. As we wish you to modify the output circuits, the machine will be printing words, not columns of figures. I don't quite understand. This is a project on which we have been working for the last 3 centuries, since the Lamasery was founded, in fact. It is somewhat alien to your way of thought, so I hope you will listen with an open mind while I explain it. Naturally. It is really quite simple. We have been compiling a list which shall contain all the possible names of God. I beg your pardon. We have reason to believe, continued the Lama imperturbably, that all such names can be written with not more than 9 letters in an alphabet we have devised. And you have been doing this for 3 centuries? Yes. We expected it would take us about 15,000 years to complete the task. Oh, Dr. Wagner looked a little dazed. Now I see why you wanted to hire one of our machines. But exactly what is the purpose of your project? Call it ritual, if you like, but it's a fundamental part of our belief. All the many names of the Supreme Being, God, Jehovah, Allah, and so on, they are only man-made. They are only man-made labels. There is a philosophical problem of some difficulty here, which I do not propose to discuss, but somewhere among all the possible combinations of letters that can occur are what one may call the real names of God. By systematic permutation of letters, we have been trying to list them all. I see. You've been starting at AA, and working up to ZZZ. Exactly. Though we use a special alphabet of our own, modifying the electromagnetic typewriters to deal with this, of course, trivial. A rather more interesting problem is that of devising suitable circuits to eliminate ridiculous combinations. For example, no letter must occur more than 3 times in succession. 3? Surely you mean 2. 3 is correct. I am afraid it would take too long to explain why, even if you understood our language. I'm sure it would, said Wagner hastily. Go on. Luckily, it will be a simple matter to adapt your automatic sequence computer for this work, since once it has been programmed properly, it will permute each letter in turn and print the result. What would have taken us 15,000 years, it will be able to do in 100 days. Dr. Wagner was scarcely conscious of the faint sounds from the Manhattan streets below. He was in a different world, a world of natural, not man-made mountains. High up in their remote eyries, these monks had been patiently at work, generation after generation, compiling their lists of meaningless words. Was there any limit to the follies of mankind? Still, he must give no hint of his inner thoughts. The customer is always right. There's no doubt, replied the doctor, that we can modify the Mark V to print lists of this nature. I'm much more worried about the problem of installation and maintenance. Getting out to Tibet in these days is not going to be easy. We can arrange that. The components are small enough to travel by air. That is one reason why we chose your machine. If you can get them to India, we will provide transport from there.
And if you want to hire 2 of our engineers, yes, for the 3 months that the project should occupy. I've no doubt that personnel can manage that.
Dr. Wagner scribbled a note on his desk pad.
There are just 2 other points.
Before he could finish the sentence, the llama had produced a small slip of paper.
This is my certified credit balance at the Asiatic Bank.
Thank you. It appears to be,
adequate. The second matter is so trivial that I hesitate to mention it, but it's surprising how often the obvious gets overlooked. What source of electrical energy have you? A diesel generator providing 50 kilowatts at 110 volts. It was installed about 5 years ago and is quite reliable. It's made life at the lamasery much more comfortable. But of course it was really installed to provide power for the motors driving the prayer wheels.
Of course, echoed Dr. Wagner. I should have thought of that. The view from the parapet was vertiginous, but in time one gets used to anything. After 3 months, George Hanley was not impressed by the 2,000-foot swoop into the abyss or the remote checkerboard of fields in the valley below. He was leaning against the wind-smooth stones and staring morosely at the distant mountains whose names he had never bothered to discover. This, thought George, was the craziest thing that had ever happened to him. Project Shangri-La, some wit back at the labs had christened it. For weeks now the Mark V had been churning out acres of sheets covered with gibberish. Patiently, inexorably, the computer had been rearranging letters in all their possible combinations, exhausting each class before going on to the next. As the sheets had emerged from the electromatic typewriters, the monks had carefully cut them up and pasted them into enormous books. In another week, heaven be praised, they would have finished. Just what obscure calculations had convinced the monks that they needn't bother to go on to works of 10, 20, or 100 letters, George didn't know. One of his recurring nightmares was that there would be some change of plan, and that the High Lama, whom they'd naturally called Sam Jaffe, though he didn't look a bit like him, would suddenly announce that the project would be extended to approximately AD 2060. They were quite capable of it. George heard the heavy wooden door slam in the wind as Chuck came out onto the parapet beside him. As usual, Chuck was smoking one of the cigars that made him so popular with the monks, who, it seemed, were quite willing to embrace all the minor and most of the major pleasures of life. That was one thing in their favor. They might be crazy, but they weren't blue noses. Those frequent trips they took down to the village, for instance.
Listen, George, said Chuck urgently. I've learned something that means trouble.
What's wrong? Isn't the machine behaving? That was the worst contingency George could imagine. It might delay his return, and nothing could be more horrible. The way he felt now, even the sight of a TV commercial would seem like manna from heaven. At least it would be some link with home.
No, it's nothing like that. Chuck settled himself on the parapet, which was unusual because normally he was scared of the drop. I just found out what all this is about.
What do you mean? I thought we knew.
Sure, we knew what the monks are trying to do, but we didn't know why. It's the craziest thing.
Tell me something new, George growled.
But old Sam's just come clean with me. You know the way he drops in every afternoon to watch the sheets roll out. Well, this time he seemed rather excited, or At least as near as he'll ever get to it. When I told him that we were on the last cycle, he asked me in that cute little English accent of his if I ever wondered what they were trying to do. I said sure, and he told me.
Go on, I'll buy it.
Well, they believe that when they have listed all his names, and they reckon there are about 9 billion of them, God's purpose will be achieved. The human race will have finished what it was created to do, and there won't be any point in carrying on. Indeed, the very idea is something like blasphemy.
Then what do they expect us to do? Commit suicide?
There's no need for that. When the list's completed, God steps in and simply winds things up. Bingo.
Oh, I get it. When we finish our job, it will be the end of the world. Chuck gave a nervous little laugh.
That's what I said to Sam. And do you know what happened? He looked at me in a very queer way, like I'd been stupid in class, and said, "It's nothing as trivial as that."
George thought this over for a moment. That's what I call taking the wide view, he said presently. But what do you suppose we should do about it? I don't see that it makes the slightest difference to us. After all, we already knew that they were crazy.
Yeah, but don't you see what may happen? When the list completes and the last trumpet doesn't blow, or whatever it is they expect, we may get the blame. It's our machine they've been using. I don't like the situation one little bit.
I see, said George slowly. You've got a point there. But this sort of thing's happened before, you know. When I was a kid down in Louisiana, we had a crackpot preacher who once said the world was going to end next Sunday. Hundreds of people believed him, even sold their homes. Yet when nothing happened, they didn't turn nasty as you'd expect. They just decided that he made a mistake in his calculations and went right on believing. I guess some of them still do.
Well, this isn't Louisiana, in case you hadn't noticed. There are just 2 of us and hundreds of these monks. I mean, I like 'em, and I'll be sorry for old Sam when his life work backfires on him. But all the same, I wish I was somewhere else.
I've been wishing that for weeks. But there's nothing we can do until the contract's finished, and the transport arrives to fly us out.
Of course, said Chuck thoughtfully. We could always try a bit of sabotage. Like hell we could. That would make things worse. Not the way I meant. Look at it like this. The machine will finish its run 4 days from now, on the present 20 hours a day basis. The transport calls in a week. Okay. Then all we need to do is find something that needs replacing during one of the overhaul periods. Something that will hold up the works for a couple of days. We'll fix it, of course, but not too quickly. If we time matters properly, we could be down at the airfield when the last name drops out of the register. They won't be able to catch us then.
I don't like it, said George. It will be the first time I ever walked out on a job. Besides, it would make them suspicious. No, I'll sit tight and take what comes.
I still don't like it, he said 7 days later, as the tough little mountain ponies carried them down the winding road. And don't you think I'm running away because I'm afraid. I'm just sorry for those poor old guys up there, and I don't want to be around when they find out what suckers they've been. I wonder how Sam will take it. It's funny, replied Chuck, but when I said goodbye, I got the idea he knew we were walking out on him, and that he didn't care because he knew the machine was running smoothly and that the job would soon be finished. After that, well, of course for him, there just isn't any after that. George turned in his saddle and stared back up the mountain road. This was the last place from which one could get a clear view of the lamasery. The squat, angular buildings were silhouetted against the afterglow of the sunset. Here and there, lights gleamed like portholes in the side of an ocean liner. Electric lights, of course, sharing the same circuit as the Mark V. How much longer would they share it? Wondered George. Would the monks smash up the computer in their rage and disappointment? Or would they just sit down quietly and begin their calculations all over again? He knew exactly what was happening up on the mountain at this very moment. The High Lama and his assistants would be sitting in their silk robes inspecting the sheets as the junior monks carried them away from the typewriters and pasted them into the great volumes. No one would be saying anything. The sound would be the incessant patter and never-ending rainstorm of the keys hitting the paper, for the Mark V itself was utterly silent as it flashed through its thousands of calculations a second. 3 months of this, thought George, was enough to start anyone climbing up the wall. "There she is," called Chuck, pointing down into the valley. "Ain't she beautiful?" She certainly was, thought George. The battered old DC-3 lay at the end of the runway like a tiny silver cross. In 2 hours she would be bearing them away to freedom and sanity. It was a thought worth savoring like a fine liquor. George let it roll around in his mind as the pony trudged patiently down the slope. The swift night of the high Himalayas was now almost upon them. Fortunately, the road was very good, as roads went in that region, and they were both carrying torches. There was not the slightest danger, only a certain discomfort from the bitter cold. The sky overhead was perfectly clear, and ablaze with the familiar, friendly stars. At least there would be no risk, thought George, of the pilot being unable to take off because of weather conditions. That had been his only remaining worry. He began to sing, but gave it up after a while. This vast arena of mountains, gleaming like whitely hooded ghosts on every side, did not encourage such ebullience. Presently George glanced at his watch. "Should be there in an hour," he called back over his shoulder to Chuck. Then he added in an afterthought, "Wonder if the computer's finished its run. It was due about now." Chuck didn't reply. So George swung around in his saddle. He could see Chuck's face, a white oval turned toward the sky. "Look," whispered Chuck, and George lifted his eyes to heaven. There is always a last time for everything. Overhead, without any fuss, the stars were going out. I love that story. Because the ending is so just subtle, but it just sits in your stomach when you're done. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Hello, Crazy Mama. Hello, Lena. How are you? Oh, boy. You'll have to excuse me. I'm eating pizza crust. Hey, Tessa. I didn't see you sneak in here. Very sneaky. Oh, I'm doing all right. It's been a weird day.
It was like, hey Buford, how are you? It was really nice out. I mean, well, scratch that. It was um it was like warm out. Yes, so it's kind of warm. It was like 55 degrees out yesterday, but it was raining all day. Today, it's sunny, but it's like 20. Like, what the heck? It's like Mother Nature's got to make up her mind. Alrighty then. Well, we are right on schedule. Alrighty then. '90s to '68 is why I could never live in the South. Yeah, Buford, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's typical Western New York weather. It's like it could be freezing cold one day and warm the next, and we're all just assuming that Mother Nature is drinking too much. So now we are turning inwards to The Electric Ant by Philip K. Dick. Whose hair? I don't have hair. I don't know what you're talking about, Tessa. This hair? Doesn't want to do what I'm try to I never the snazzy is not a word I would ever use to describe myself, but I'll let you do it. Oh. All right. This is The Electric Ant by Philip K. Dick. At 4:15 in the afternoon TST, Garson Poole woke up in his hospital bed, knew that he lay in a hospital bed in a 3-bed ward, and realized in addition 2 things. He no longer had a right hand, and that he felt no pain. Shh! I was getting to the button. I was doing a dramatic pause. Oh. This is why you have to be here. They had given him a strong analgesic, he said to himself as he stared at the far wall with its window showing downtown New York. Webs in which vehicles and peds darted and wheeled glimmered in the late afternoon sun, and the brilliance of the aging light pleased him. It's not yet out, he thought, and neither am I. A phone lay on the table beside his bed. He hesitated, then picked it up and dialed for an outside line. A moment later, he was faced with Louis Danceman, in charge of the Triplan's activities, while he, Garson Poole, was elsewhere. "Thank God you're alive," Danceman said, seeing him, his big, fleshy face with its moon surface of pockmarks flattened with relief. "I've been calling all—" "I just don't have a right hand," Poole said. "But you'll be okay. I mean, they can graft another one on." How long have I been here?" Poole said. He wondered where the nurses and doctors had gone to, why they weren't clucking and fussing about him making a call. 4 days, Danceman said. "Everything here at the plant is going splunkishly. In fact, we've splunked orders from 3 separate police systems all here on Terra. 2 in Ohio, 1 in Wyoming. Good, solid orders with 1/3 in advance and all the usual 3-year lease option. Come get me out of here, Poole said. I can't get you out until the new hand. I'll have it done later. He wanted desperately to get back to familiar surroundings. Memory of the mercantile squib looming grotesquely on the pilot screen careened at the back of his mind. If he shut his eyes, he felt himself back in his damaged craft as it plunged from one vehicle to another, piling up enormous damage as it went. The kinetic sensations, he winced, recalling them. I guess I'm lucky, he said to himself. Is Sarah Benton there with you? Danceman asked. No. Of course, his personal secretary, if only for job considerations, would be hovering close by, mothering him in her jejune infantile way. All heavy-set women like to mother people, he thought, and they're dangerous. If they fall on you, they can kill you. Maybe that's what happened to me, he said aloud. Maybe Sarah fell on my squib. No. A tie rod and the steering fin of your squib split apart during the heavy rush hour traffic, and you... I remember. He turned in his bed as the door of the ward opened. A white-clad doctor with 2 blue-clad nurses appeared, making their way toward his bed. I'll talk to you later, Poole said, and hung up the phone. He took a deep, expectant breath. You shouldn't be phoning quite so soon, the doctor said as he studied his chart. Mr. Garson Poole, owner of Triplan Electronics, maker of random indent darts that track their prey for a circle radius of 1,000 miles, responding to unique Ceph wave patterns. You're a successful man, Mr. Poole. But, Mr. Poole, you're not a man. You're an electric ant. Christ, Poole said, stunned. So we can't really treat you here now that we've found out. We knew, of course, as soon as we examined your injured right hand. We saw the electronic components, and then we made torso x-rays, and of course they bore out our hypothesis. What, Poole said, is an electric ant? But he knew he could decipher the term. The nurse said, An organic robot. I see, Poole said. Frigid perspiration rose to the surface of his skin all across his body. You didn't know, the doctor said. No, Poole shook his head. The doctor said, We get an electric ant every week or so, either brought in here from a squib accident like yourself, or one seeking voluntary admission, one who, like yourself, has never been told, who has functioned all alongside humans, believing himself itself human. As to your hand, he paused. Forget my hand, Poole said savagely. Be calm. The doctor leaned over him, peered acutely down into Poole's face. We'll have a hospital boat convey you to a service facility where repairs or replacement on your hand can be made at a reasonable expense. Either to yourself, if you're self-owned, or to your owners, if such there are. In any case, you'll be back at your desk at Triplan functioning just as before. Except, Poole said, now I know. He wondered if Danceman or Sarah or any of the others at the office knew. Had they? Or one of them purchased him, designed him? A figurehead, he said to himself. That's all I've been. I must never really have run the company. It was a delusion implanted in me when I was made, along with the delusion that I'm human and alive. Before you leave for the repair facility, the doctor said, could you kindly settle your bill at the front desk? Poole said acidly,
How can there be a bill if you don't treat ants here? For our services, the nurse said, up until the point we knew. Bill me, Poole said with furious, impotent anger. Bill my firm. With massive effort that he managed to sit up, his head swimming, he stepped haltingly from the bed onto the floor. I'll be glad to leave here, he said as he rose to a standing position, and thank you for your humane attention. Thank you too, Mr. Poole, the doctor said, or rather, should I say just Poole. At the repair facility, he had his missing hand replaced. It proved fascinating, the hand. He examined it for a long time before he let the technicians install it. On the surface, it appeared organic. In fact, on the surface it was. Natural skin covered natural flesh, and the true blood-filled veins and capillaries. But beneath that, wires and circuits, miniaturized components gleamed. Looking deep into the wrist, he saw surge gates, motors, multi-stage valves, all very small, intricate. And the hand cost 40 frogs, a week's salary, insofar as he drew it from the company payroll. Is this guaranteed? He asked the technicians as they fused the bone section of the hand to the balance of his body. 90 days, parts and labor, one of the technicians said, unless subjected to unusual or intentional abuse. That sounds vaguely suggestive, Poole said. The technician, a man, all of them were men, said, regarding him keenly, You've been posing? Unintentionally, Poole said. And now it's intentional, Poole said. Exactly. Do you know why you never guessed? There must have been signs, clickings and whirrings from inside you now and then. You never guessed because you were programmed to not notice. You'll now have the same difficulty finding out why you were built and for whom you've been operating. A slave, Poole said. A mechanical slave. You've had fun. I've lived a good life, Poole said. I've worked hard. He paid the facility its 40 frogs, flexed his new fingers, tested them out by picking up various objects, such as coins, then departed. 10 minutes later, he was aboard a public carrier on his way home. It had been quite a day. At home in his one-room apartment, he poured himself a shot of Jack Daniel's Purple Label, 60 years old, and sat sipping it, meanwhile gazing through his sole window at the building on the opposite side of the street. Shall I go to the office? He asked himself. If so, why? If not, why? Choose one. Christ, he thought. It undermines you, knowing this. I'm a freak, he realized. An inanimate object mimicking an animate one. But he felt alive. Yet he felt differently now. About himself, hence about everyone, especially Danceman and Sarah, everyone at Triplan. I think I'll kill myself, he said to himself. But I'm probably programmed not to do that. It would be a costly waste which my owner would have to absorb, and he wouldn't want to. Programmed. In me somewhere, he thought, there is a matrix fitted in place, a grid screen that cuts me off from certain thoughts, certain actions, and forces me into others. I'm not free. I never was. But now I know it, and that makes it different. Turning his window to opaque, he snapped on the overhead light, carefully set about removing his clothing piece by piece. He had watched carefully as the technicians at the repair facility had attached his new hand. He had a rather clear idea now of how his body had been assembled. 2 major panels, one in each thigh. The technicians had removed the panels to check the circuit complexes beneath. If I'm programmed, he decided, The matrix probably can be found there. The maze of circuitry baffled him. I need help, he said to himself. Let's see. What's the phone code for the Class BBB computer we hire at the office? He picked up the phone, dialed the computer at its permanent location in Boise, Idaho. Use of this computer is prorated at a 5 frogs per minute basis, a mechanical voice from the phone said. Please hold your master credit charge plate before the screen. He did so. At the sound of the buzzer, you will be connected with the computer. The voice continued. Please query it as rapidly as possible, taking into account the fact that its answer will be given in terms of a microsecond, while your query will... He turned the sound down then, but quickly turned it up as the blank audio input of the computer appeared on the screen. At this moment, the computer had become a giant ear listening to him, as well as 50,000 other queriers throughout Terra. Scan me visually, he instructed the computer, and tell me where I will find the programming mechanism which controls my thoughts and behavior. He waited. On the phone's screen, a great active eye, multi-lensed, peered at him. He displayed himself for it, there in his one-room apartment. The computer said, Remove your chest panel. Apply pressure at your breastbone, and then ease outward. He did so. A section of his chest came off. Dizzily, he set it down on the floor. I can distinguish control models, the computer said, but I can't tell which. It paused. Its eye roved about on the phone screen. I distinguish a roll of punched tape mounted above your heart mechanism. Do you see it? Poole craned his neck, peered. He saw it, too. I will have to sign off, the computer said. After I examine the data available to me, I will contact you and give you an answer. Good day. The screen died out. I'll yank the tape out of me, Poole said to himself. Tiny, no larger than 2 spools of thread, with a scanner mounted between the delivery drum and the take-up drum. He could not see any signs of motion. The spools seemed inert. They must cut in as override, he reflected, when specific situations occur. Override to my encephalic processes, and they've been doing it all my life. He reached down, touched the delivery drum. And all I have to do is tear this out, he thought. And the phone screen relit. Master credit charge plate number 3-BNX882-HQR446-T. The computer's voice came. This is BBB-307DR, recontacting you in response to your query of 16 seconds lapse, November 4th, 1992. The punch tape roll above your heart mechanism is not a programming turret, but is in fact a reality supply construct. All sense stimuli received by your central neurological system emanate from that unit, and tampering with it would be risky if not terminal. It added, You appear to have no programming circuit. Query answered. Good day. It flicked off. Poole, standing naked before the phone screen, touched the tape drum once again, with calculated, enormous caution. I see, he thought wildly. Or do I see? This unit, if I cut the tape, he realized, my world will disappear. Reality will continue for others, but not for me, because my reality, my universe, is coming to me from this minuscule unit, fed into the scanner and then into my central nervous system, as it snailishly unwinds. It has been unwinding for years, he decided. Getting his clothes, he redressed, seated himself in his big armchair, a luxury imported into his apartment from Triplane's main offices, and lit a tobacco cigarette. His hands shook as he laid down his initial lighter. Leaning back, he blew smoke before himself, creating a nimbus of gray. I have to go slowly, he said to himself. What am I trying to do? Bypass my programming? But the computer found no programming circuit. Do I want to interfere with the reality tape? And if so, why? Because, he thought, if I can control that, I control reality, at least so far as I'm concerned. My subjective reality, but that's all there is. Objective reality is a synthetic construct dealing with a hypothetical universalization of a multitude of subjective realities. My universe is lying between my fingers, he realized. If I can just figure out how the damn thing works. All I set out to do originally was to search for and locate my programming circuits so I could gain true homeostatic functioning, control of myself, but with this, he did not merely gain control of himself. He gained control over everything. And this sets me apart from every human who ever lived and died, he thought somberly. Going over to the phone, he dialed his office. When he had Danceman on the screen, he said briskly, I want you to send a complete set of micro tools and enlarging screen over to my apartment. I have some microcircuitry to work on. Then he broke the connection, not wanting to discuss it. A half hour later, a knock sounded on his door. When he opened up, he found himself facing one of the shop foremen, loaded down with micro tools of every sort. You didn't say exactly what you wanted, the foreman said, entering the apartment. So Mr. Danceman had me bring everything over. And the enlarging lens system? It's in the truck up on the roof. Maybe what I want to do, Poole thought, is die. He lit a cigarette, stood smoking and waiting as the shop foreman lugged the heavy, enlarged screen with its power supply and control panel into the apartment. This is suicide, what I'm doing here, he shuddered. Anything wrong, Mr. Poole? The shop foreman said as he rose to his feet, relieved of the burden of the enlarging lens system. You must still be rickety on your pins from your accident. Yes, Poole said quietly. He stood tautly, waiting until the foreman left. Under the enlarging lens system, the plastic tape assumed a new shape, a wide track along which hundreds of thousands of punch holes worked their way. I thought so, Poole thought. Not recorded as charges on a ferrous oxide layer, but actually punched free slots. Under the lens, the strip of tape visibly oozed forward. Very slowly, but it did, at uniform velocity, move in the direction of the scanner. The way I figure it is, he thought, that the punched holes are on gates. It functions like a player piano. Solid is no, punch hole yes is yes. How can I test this? Obviously, filling in a number of holes. He measured the amount of tape left on the delivery spool, calculated at a great effort the velocity of the tape's movement, and then came up with a figure. If he altered the tape visible in the ongoing edge of the scanner, 5 to 7 hours would pass before that particular time period arrived. He would, in effect, be painting out stimuli due a few hours from now. With a microbrush, he swabbed a relatively large section of the tape with opaque varnish, obtained from the supply kit accompanying the microtools. I have smeared out stimuli for about a half hour, he pondered. Jesus. Have covered at least 1,000 punches. It would be interesting to see what change, if any, overcame his environment 6 hours from now. 5.5 hours later, he sat at Crachter's superb bar in Manhattan, having a drink with Dantzman. "You look bad," Dantzman said. "I am bad," Poole said. He finished his drink, a Scotch sour Apologize. He finished his drink, a Scotch sour, and ordered another. "From the accident?" "In a sense, yes," Dantzman said. "Is it something you found out about yourself?" Raising his head, Poole eyed him in the murky light of the bar. "Then you know." "I know," Dantzman said, "that I should call you Poole instead of Mr. Poole, but I prefer the latter and will continue to do so." "How long have you known?" Poole said. "Since you took over the firm. I was told that the actual owners of Triplan, who are located in the Prox system, wanted Triplan to run by an electric ant whom they could control. They wanted a brilliant and forceful, the real owners. This was the first he'd heard that. We have 2,000 stockholders scattered everywhere. Marvis Bay and her husband Ernan on Prox 4 control 51% of the voting stock. This has been true from the start. Why didn't I know? I was told not to tell you. You were to think that you yourself made all company policy with my help, but actually I was feeding you what the Bays fed to me." "I am a figurehead," Poole said. "In a sense, yes," Dantzman nodded. "But you'll always be Mr. Poole to me." A section of the far wall vanished, and with it several people at tables nearby, and through the big glass side of the bar the skyline of New York City flickered out of existence. Seeing his face, Dantzman said, "What is it?" Poole said hoarsely, "Look around. Do you see any changes?" After looking around the room, Dantzman said, "No. What like?" "You still see the skyline?" "Sure. Smoggy as it is. The lights wink." "Now I know," Poole said. He had been right. Every punch hole covered up meant the disappearance of some object in his reality world. Standing, he said, "I'll see you later, Dantzman. I have to get back to my apartment. There's some work I'm doing. Good night." He strode from the bar and out onto the street, searching for a cab. No cabs. Those two, he thought. I wonder what else I painted over. Prostitutes, flowers, prisons. There, in the bar's parking lot, Dantzman's squib. I'll take that, he decided. There are still cabs in Dantzman's world. He can get one later. Anyhow, it's a company car, and I hold a copy of the key. Presently, he was in the air, turning towards his apartment. New York City had not returned. To the left and right, vehicles and buildings, streets, pedrunners, signs, and in the center, nothing. How can I fly into that? He asked himself. I'd disappear. Or would I? He flew toward the nothingness. Smoking one cigarette after another, he flew in a circle for 15 minutes, and then, soundlessly, New York reappeared. He could finish his trip. He stubbed out his cigarette, a waste of something so valuable, and shot off in the direction of his apartment. If I insert a narrow, opaque strip, he pondered as he unlocked his apartment door, I can... His thoughts ceased. Someone sat in his living room, watching a Captain Kirk on the TV. Sarah, he said, nettled. She rose. Well padded, but graceful. You weren't at the hospital, so I came here. I still have the key you gave me back in March after you had that awful argument. Oh, you look so depressed. She came up to him, peeped into his face anxiously. Does your injury hurt that badly? It's not that. He removed his coat, tie, shirt, then his chest panel. Kneeling down, he began inserting his hands into the microtool gloves. Pausing, he looked up at her and said, I found out I'm an electric ant, which from one standpoint opens up certain possibilities, which I am exploring now. He flexed his fingers, and the far end of the left Waldo, a micro screwdriver, moved, magnified into visibility by the enlarging lens system. You can watch, he informed her, if you so desire. She began to cry. What's the matter? He demanded, savagely, without looking up from his work. It's just so sad. You've been such a good employer to all of us at Triplan. We respect you, and now that's all changed. The plastic tape had an unpunched margin at top and bottom. He cut a horizontal strip, very narrow, then, after a moment of great concentration, cut the tape itself 4 hours away from the scanning head. Then he rotated the cut strip into a right angle piece in relation to the scanner, fused it in place with a micro heat element, then reattached the tape reel to its left and right sides. He had, in effect, inserted a dead 20 minutes into the unfolding flow of his reality. Oh, bite me, TikTok. Stupid. We detected inactivity during your live. Yeah. Sure you did. He had, in effect, inserted a dead 20 minutes into the unfolding flow of his reality. It would take effect, according to his calculations, a few minutes after midnight. Are you fixing yourself? Sarah asked timidly. Poole said, I'm freeing myself. Beyond this, he had several alterations in mind. But first, he had to test his theory. Blank, untouched tape meant no stimuli, in which case the lack of tape. That look on your face, Sarah said. She began gathering up her purse, coat, rolled up Ovid magazine. I'll go. I can see how you feel about finding me here. Stay, he said. I'll watch the Captain Kirk with you. He got into his shirt. Remember years ago when they were, 20 or 22 channels, TV channels, before the government shut down the independents? She nodded. What would it have looked like, he said, if this TV set projected all channels onto the cathode ray screen all the time? Could we have distinguished anything in the mixture? I don't think so. Maybe we could learn to. Learn to be selective, do our own perceiving, what we wanted to and what we didn't. Think of the possibilities. If our brains could handle 20 images at once. Think of the amount of knowledge which could be stored during a given period. I wonder if the human brain, he broke off. The human brain couldn't do it, he said, presently reflecting to himself. But in theory, a quasi-organic brain might. Is that what you have? Sarah asked. Yes, Poole said. They watched the Captain Kirk to its end, and then they went to bed. But Poole sat up against his pillows, smoking and brooding. Beside him, Sarah stirred restlessly, wondering why he did not turn off the light. 11:50. It would happen any time now. "Sarah," he said, "I want your help. In a very few minutes something strange will happen to me. It won't last long, but I want you to watch me carefully. See if I," he gestured, "show any changes. If I seem to go to sleep, or if I talk nonsense, or—" He wanted to say if I disappear, but he did not. "I won't do any harm, but I think it might be a good idea if you armed yourself. Do you have your anti-mugging gun with you?" "In my purse." She had become fully awake now, sitting up in bed. She gazed at him with wild fright, her ample shoulders tanned and freckled in the light of the room. He got her gun for her. The room stiffened into paralyzed immobility. The colors began to drain away. Objects diminished until, smoke-like, they flitted away into shadows. Darkness filmed everything as the objects in the room became weaker and weaker. The last stimuli are dying out, Poole realized. He squinted, trying to see. He made out Sarah Benton sitting in the bed, a two-dimensional figure that doll-like had been propped up there to fade and dwindle. Random gusts of dematerialized substance eddied about in unstable clouds. The elements collected, fell apart, then collected once again. And then the last heat, energy, and light dissipated. The room closed over and fell into itself, as if sealed off from reality. And at that point, absolute blackness replaced everything. Space without depth, not nocturnal, but rather stiff and unyielding. And in addition, he heard nothing. Reaching, he tried to touch something, but he had nothing to reach with. Awareness of his own body had departed along with everything else in the universe. He had no hands, and even if he had, there would be nothing for them to feel. "Am I still right about the way the damn tape works?" he said to himself, using a non-existent mouth to communicate an invisible message. Will this pass in 10 minutes? He asked himself. Am I right about that too? He waited, but knew intuitively that his time sense had departed with everything else. I can only wait, he realized, and hope it won't be long. To pace himself, he thought, I'll make up an encyclopedia. I'll try to list everything that begins with A. Let's see, he pondered. Apple, automobile, axitron, atmosphere, Atlantic, tomato aspic, advertising. He thought on and on, categories slithering through his fright-haunted mind. All at once, light flickered. He lay on the couch in the living room, and mild sunlight spilled through the single window. 2 men bent over him, their hands full of tools. Maintenance men, he realized. They've been working on me. He's conscious, one of the technicians said. He rose, stood back. Sarah Benton, dithering with anxiety, replaced him. Thank God, she said, breathing wetly in Poole's ear. I was so afraid. I called Mr. Danceman finally about... What happened? Poole broke in harshly. Start from the beginning, and for God's sake speak slowly so I can assimilate all of it. Sarah composed herself, paused to rub her nose, and then plunged on nervously. You passed out. You just lay there as if you were dead. I waited until 2:30, and you did nothing. I called Mr. Danceman, waking him up, unfortunately, and he called the electric ant maintenance. I mean, the organic Roby maintenance people. And these 2 men came about 4:45. And they've been working on you ever since. It's now 6:15 in the morning, and I'm very cold and I want to go to bed. I can't make it into the office today. I really can't." She turned away, sniffling. The sound annoyed him. One of the uniformed maintenance men said, "You've been playing around with your reality tape." "Yes," Poole said. Why deny it? Obviously they had found the inserted solid strip. "I shouldn't have been out that long," he said. "I inserted a 10-minute strip only." It shut off the tape transport. All right, you guys need to give me a minute here. Apologize, my eyes are going wonky on me. Making it really hard to read. It shut off the tape transport, the technician explained. The tape stopped moving forward. Your insertion jammed it, and it automatically shut down to avoid tearing the tape. Why would you want to fiddle around with that? Don't you know what you could do? I'm not sure, Poole said. But you have a good idea, Poole said acridly. That's why I'm doing it. Your bill, the maintenance man said, is going to be 95 frogs, payable in installments if you so desire. Okay, he said. He sat up groggily, rubbed his eyes, and grimaced. His head ached, and his stomach felt totally empty. Shave the tape next time, the primary technician told him. That way it won't jam. Didn't it occur to you that it had a safety factor built into it, so that it would stop rather than... What happens, Poole interrupted, his voice low and intently careful, if no tape passed under the scanner? No tape, nothing at all. The photocells shining upward without impedance. The technicians glanced at each other. One said, all the neurocircuits jump their gaps and short out. Meaning what? Poole said. Meaning it's the end of the mechanism. Poole said, I've examined the circuit. It doesn't carry enough voltage to do that. Metal won't fuse under such slight loads of current, even if the terminals are touching. We're talking about a millionth of a watt along a cesium channel, perhaps a 16th of an inch in length. Let's assume there are a billion possible combinations at one instant arising from the punch-outs on the tape. The total output isn't cumulative. The amount of current depends on what the battery details for that module, and it's not much, with all the gates open and going. Would we lie? One of the technicians asked wearily. Why not? Poole said. Here I have an opportunity to experience everything simultaneously, to know the universe and its entirety, to be momentarily in contact with all reality, something that no human can do. A symphonic score entering my brain outside of time, all notes, all instruments sounding at once, and all symphonies. Do you see? It'll burn you out, both technicians said together. I don't think so, Poole said. Sarah said, Would you like a sip of coffee? Would you like a cup? Oh, my God. I can't freaking read tonight. Would you like a cup of coffee, Mr. Poole? Yes, he said. He lowered his legs, pressed his cold feet against the floor, shuddered. He then stood up. His body ached. They had me lying all night on the couch, he realized. All things considered, they could have done better than that. At the kitchen table in the far corner of the room, Garson Poole sat up, sipping coffee across from Sarah. The technicians had long since gone. You're not going to try any more experiments on yourself, are you? Sarah asked wistfully. Poole grated. I would like to control time, to reverse it. I will cut a segment of the tape out, he thought, and fuse it in upside down. The usual sequences will then flow the other way. Thereupon I will walk backward down the steps from the roof field, back up to my door, push a locked door open, walk backward to the sink where I will get out a stack of dirty dishes. I will seat myself at this table before the stack, fill each dish with food produced from my stomach. I will then transfer the food to the refrigerator. The next day I will take the food out of the refrigerator, pack it into bags, carry the bags to the supermarket, distribute the food here and there in the store, and at last at the front counter they will pay me my money for this from their cash register. The food will be packed up with other food in big plastic bags, shipped out of the city into the hydroponic plants on the Atlantic, there to be joined back to trees and bushes, or the bodies of dead animals are pushed deep into the ground. But what would all that prove? A videotape running backward. I would know no more than I know now, which is not enough. What I want, he realized, is ultimate and absolute reality. For 1 microsecond. After that, it doesn't matter, because all will be known. Nothing will be left to understand or see. I might try one other change, he said to himself, before I try cutting the tape. I will prick new punch holes in the tape and see what presently emerges. It will be interesting because I will not know what the holes I make mean. Using the tip of a microtool, he punched several holes at random on the tape, as close to the scanner as he could manage. He did not want to wait. I wonder if you'll see it, he said to Sarah. Apparently not, insofar as he could extrapolate. Something may show up, he said to her. I just want to warn you. I don't want you to be afraid. Oh dear, Sarah said tinnily. He examined his wristwatch. 1 minute passed, then a second, a third. Then, in the center of the room appeared a flock of green and black ducks. They quacked excitedly, rose from the floor, fluttered against the ceiling in a dithering mass of feathers and wings, and frantic in their vast urge, their instinct to get away. Ducks, Poole said, marveling. I punched a hole for a flight of wild ducks. Now something else appeared. A park bench with an elderly, tattered man seated on it, reading a torn, bent newspaper. He looked up, dimly made out Poole, smiled briefly at him with badly made dentures, and then returned to his folded-back newspaper. He read on. Do you see them? Poole asked Sarah. And the ducks? At that moment the ducks and the park bum disappeared. Nothing remained of them. The interval of their punch holes had quickly passed. They weren't real, Sarah said, were they? So how... You're not real, he told Sarah. You're a stimulus factor on my reality tape. A punch hole that can be glazed over. Do you also have an existence in another reality tape, or one in an objective reality? He did not know. He couldn't tell. Perhaps Sarah did not know either. Perhaps she existed in 1,000 reality tapes, perhaps on every reality tape ever manufactured. If I cut the tape, he said, you will be everywhere and nowhere, like everything else in the universe. At least as far as I'm aware of it. Sarah faltered. I am real. I want to know you completely, Poole said. To do that, I must cut the tape. If I don't do it now, I'll do it some other time. It's inevitable that eventually I'll do it. So why wait? He asked himself. There is always the possibility that Danceman has reported back to my maker that they will be making moves to head me off, because perhaps I'm endangering their property, myself. You make me wish I'd gone to the office after all, Sarah said, her mouth turned down with dimpled gloom. Go, Poole said. I don't want to leave you alone. I'll be fine, Poole said. No, you're not going to be fine. You're going to unplug yourself or something. Kill yourself because you've found out you're just an electric ant and not a human being. He said presently, Maybe so. Maybe it boiled down to that. And I can't stop you, she said. No, he nodded in agreement. But I'm going to stay, Sarah said, even if I can't stop you. Because if I do leave you and you do kill yourself, I'll always ask myself for the rest of my life what would have happened if I had stayed. You see? Again, he nodded. Go ahead, Sarah said. He rose to his feet. It's not pain I'm going to feel, he told her, although it may look like that to you. Keep in mind the fact that organic robots have minimal pain circuits in them. I will be experiencing the most intense. Don't tell me any more. Just do it if you're going to, or don't do it if you're not. Clumsily, because he was frightened, he wriggled his hands into the microglove assembly, reached to pick up a tiny tool, a sharp cutting blade. I'm going to cut the tape mounted inside my chest panel, he said, as he gazed through the enlarging lens system. That's all. His hand shook as it lifted the cutting blade. In a second it can be done, he realized. All over. And I will have time to fuse the cut ends of the tape back together, he realized. A half an hour at least if I change my mind. He cut the tape. Staring at him, cowering, Sarah whispered, Nothing happened. I have 30 or 40 minutes. He reseated himself at the table, having drawn his hands from the gloves. His voice, he noticed, shook. Undoubtedly Sarah was aware of it too, and he felt anger at himself, knowing that he had alarmed her. I'm sorry, he said, irrationally. He wanted to apologize to her. Maybe you ought to leave, he said in panic. Again he stood up. So did she, reflexively, as if imitating him. Bloated and nervous, she stood there, palpitating. Go away, he said thickly. Back to the office where you ought to be. Where we both ought to be. I'm going to fuse the tape ends together, he told himself. The tension is too great for me to stand. Reaching his hands towards the gloves, he groped to pull them over his straining fingers. Peering into the enlarging screen, he saw the beam from the photoelectric gleam upward, pointed directly into the scanner. At the same time, he saw the end of the tape disappearing under the scanner. He saw this, understood it. Understood it. I'm too late, he realized. It has passed through. God, he thought, help me. It has begun winding at a rate greater than I calculated. So now that he saw apples, cobblestones, and zebras, he felt warmth, the silky texture of cloth. He felt the ocean lapping at him, and a great wind from the north plucking at him as if to lead him somewhere. Sarah was all around him. So was Danceman. New York glowed in the night, and the squibs about him scuttled and bounced through night skies and daytime and flooding draft. God damn it.
butter relaxed into liquid and on his tongue, and at the same time hideous odors and tastes assailed him, the bitter presence of poisons and lemons and blades of summer grass. He drowned. He fell. He lay in the arms of a woman, in a vast white bed, which at the same time dinned shrilly in his ear. The warning noise of a defective elevator, one of the ancient ruined downtown hotels. I'm living. I have lived. I will never live, he said to himself. And with his thoughts came every word, every sound. Insects squeaked and raced, and he half sank into a complex body of homeostatic machinery located somewhere in Triplan's labs. He wanted to say something to Sarah. Opening his mouth, he tried to bring forth words, a specific string of them, out of the enormous mass of them, brilliantly lighting his mind, scorching him with their utter meaning. His mouth burned. He wondered why. Frozen against the wall, Sarah Benton opened her eyes and saw a curl of smoke ascending from Poole's half-open mouth. Then the Robbie sank down, knelt on elbows and knees, then slowly spread out in a broken, crumpled heap. She knew, without examining it, that it had died. Poole did it to itself, she realized, and couldn't feel pain. It said so itself, or at least not very much pain. Maybe a little. Anyhow, now it's over. I had better call Mr. Danceman and tell him what's happened, she decided. Still shaky, she made her way across the room to the phone. Picking it up, she dialed from memory. It thought I was a stimulus factor on its reality tape, she said to herself. So it thought I would die when it died. How strange, she thought. Why did it imagine that? It had never been plugged into the real world. It had lived in an electric world of its own. How bizarre. Mr. Danceman? She said when the circuit to his office had been put through. Poole is gone. It destroyed itself right in front of my eyes. You'd better come over. So we're finally free of it? Yes. Won't it be nice? Danceman said. I'll send a couple of men over from the shop. He saw past her, made out the sight of Poole lying by the kitchen table. You go home and rest, he instructed Sarah. You must be worn out by all this. Yes, she said. Thank you, Mr. Danceman. She hung up and stood aimlessly. And then she noticed something. My hands, she thought. She held them up. Why is it that I can see through them? The walls of the room, too, had become ill-defined. Trembling, she walked back to the inert Roby, stood by it, not knowing what to do. Through her legs the carpet showed, and then the carpet became dim, and she saw through it, farther layers of disintegrating matter beyond. Maybe if I can fuse the tape ends back together, she thought. But she did not know how, and already Poole had become vague. The wind of early morning blew about her. She did not feel it. She had begun now to cease to feel. The winds blew on. Alrighty then. Well, that's the end of that one. My apologies. I don't know if it's just like I'm tired or if my just because my eyes are going wonky. And yeah, Philip K. Dick was one one if you've never read it, he wrote a book called Ubik, and it is one of those books that when it's done, it leaves you with your brain just like questioning your own reality. It's an amazing book, and I highly recommend it. But I think I am going to call it a night. I appreciate you guys for understanding. Um, however, however, the book is called Ubik, Ubik. Highly recommended. Actually, if you guys want to hang on for 1 minute, I have something. I just wanted to do this because, well, I recorded something earlier, and I would like to play it for you guys because it's fun. And it is a little bit of a sneak peek into what we'll be reading on Sunday, which I will be better rested for. And yes, so let me, if you guys will humor me for a minute, I think you'll like it. Now, I've already let slip that we'll be reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory on Friday. And hopefully Charlie went on wolfing the chocolate. He couldn't stop, and in less than half a minute the whole thing had disappeared down his throat. He was quite out of breath, but he felt marvelously, extraordinarily happy. He reached out a hand to take the change. Then he paused. His eyes were just above the level of the counter. They were staring at the silver coins lying there. The coins were all 5-penny pieces. There were 9 of them altogether. Surely it wouldn't matter if he spent just one more. "I think," he said quietly, "I think I'll have just one more of those chocolate bars. The same kind as before, please." "Why not?" the fat shopkeeper said, reaching behind him again and taking another Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mallow Delight from the shelf. He laid it on the counter. Charlie picked it up and tore off the wrapper. And suddenly, from underneath the wrapper, there came a brilliant flash of gold. Charlie's heart stood still. So yeah, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, starting Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Storytime with UndeadPapa. It's Sunday night bedtime stories. I am going to go rest, probably fall asleep, and sleep, and sleep, and sleep. So, but thank you all for being here. I very much appreciate you, and until next time, please be kind to each other. And be kind to yourself, because kindness matters. And so do you. Good night, everybody.